Hey everyone, welcome back to Code Row. In this video, we're going to be going over a ACF Ragdolls Part 2, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to send characters flying into buildings and destroying them. So, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be using the post-apocalyptic buildings model. It's free on sketchfab.com by Helindu, and I'll link it in the description below if you want to download the same thing I'm using in my tutorial, but let's go ahead and get started. So I created a new blank map, and the first thing I'm actually going to do is just kind of set up the environment really quick. So let's skip over to that. And now that the environment's set up, let me show you how to add impulses that will attack the characters and send them flying, kind of like this. Nice. So the first thing we're going to do is head over to our ACF folder. So we're going to go into the engine folder and the plugins, and I want to look for ACF damage types. So go over to Ascend Combat Framework Content, and in the folder you'll find under blueprints is called damage types. So we already have quite a few set up for us, and I don't really recommend changing this, or if you do, just leave it as default because I'm going to be playing around with these ones, and I'm just going to revert it to default because these ones will affect every single ACF project you have. So what you'll want to do is just hover over this and then maybe copy it into your content folder and hit copy here, but I will just use this one directly. And now in our last video, we went over the ACF Ragdoll component of going over impulse resistance and its default set to 850. And as you can see over here, it is set to 850. We do have kinematic turned on, ragdoll duration, ragdoll on hit, etc. And you'll see that in our damage type. So the ACF cut damage type is being used by our sword. So if I were to go to my content and search for that ACF default sword, you'll see that under my collisions manager, also where the traces are set up. So it'll say that the damage type class we're using is going to be ACF cut damage type, which is this one that we have opened up. So for the impulse to actually take effect, we need our damage impulse to be greater than our character's resistance. So impulse resistance is 850 here, and this impulse is 800. So our character will not be able to fly or really get knocked down at all. But if I were to change the damage on the ACF cut damage type to something like, let's say, 50,000, which is a ridiculous amount, you'll see the character flying. So you'll see the character flying as I previewed earlier when it was set to 50,000. So let me go ahead and after setting it to 50,000, let me go ahead and click play and show you how it works. So the angle of where our attacks are coming from will define and already kind of predetermine where our character is going to be flying to. So if he hits me straight down like that, I'll ragdoll down into the ground and just slide back a lot because the resistance is crazy. And he came at me from a diagonal angle while I was on his side, so it pushed me to the side. So I've created this simple level with all these buildings, and let me go ahead and just turn on chaos mode for these buildings. So what I'm going to do is go to my selection, select fracture to enable chaos mode, and I'm going to select all the buildings I want. So first I'm just going to go to the outliner and select all the buildings. And then in the fracture hierarchy, I'll go back to the fracture hierarchy and select new to generate. And I'll just leave this as the name is GC for geometry collection of buildings. And it has a ton of triangles because I do have a lot of buildings selected. Maybe this isn't the most optimized pack, I'm not sure, but let's go ahead and hit OK. And you can test this out with one building. You don't have to do all around like I am. I'm just circling my map in buildings because I'm not sure which direction my characters will actually face. And now that that's done, we can see our color coded geometry. So you'll see like an inner material as this green and outer one as this yellow, and it's going to be different based on the buildings. But what else I want to do is just go to the uniform tab, and I will set this to a lot more pieces. This actually might be a little too much. So I'm going to do something like, I think 100 by 100. I'm not really sure how this is going to look. I think the building pieces might come off in little bigger pieces. So actually, I'll do something like 500 by 500, and I'll hit fracture, and hopefully this doesn't take too long to fracture. And now that we are done loading our fracture, I can go over to my explode amount and see how it would break apart. So as you can see, all the buildings are collapsing outwards, and this is going to be about 100 pieces or 200 pieces in total. And you can have it, and you can have your mesh showing as is with these rainbow looking color pieces to differentiate how the pieces will break apart, or you can hold shift and click B to get their original looks back. So I'll just show the colors in this case, and now I just want to test my ragdoll. And you can see that 200 was probably a little too big because some of these pieces are just absolutely huge. I think I probably should have done maybe around 2,000 pieces just to get smaller pieces. So when I hit my character or my enemy, I'm expecting the impulse to kind of destroy like a huge wave of buildings. So let's go ahead and try that out. So as you can see, my FPS is actually pretty low. But when I hit this guy, let me hit him into a building just to make sure that we can oh, and since the ragdoll duration is 5 seconds, it is going to take a while to come up. And there he goes, and he knocked into the building and he's destroying all of it. And since all my buildings are actually touching each other, they are destroying each other as well. So that actually looks really awesome. I think I'm going to set it so that um, it's going to be one building with a ton of fractured components. So let me change that real quick. And just remember that in our ACF Ultimate character and as well as your enemies, when you go over to the statistics, kind of like we went over in the last video, you can set up that equilibrium. So for the RPG stat.equilibrium, because I set the max value to 0, it is just going to ragdoll on every hit. But if you want it to be on every 4th hit, just like the Patreon requested and you're using the full sample, you would set the max value to 40 because it takes away 10 per hit. All right, so this might crash my system, but I'm going to use 5,000 pieces for this one building and hit fracture. All right, so it didn't crash, but it was taking way too long to load, so I just settled for 1,000 pieces. Hopefully this looks pretty good, so I'm going to try this out. Don't forget when you make a new level to add that nav mesh bounds volume, just so your AI can move around and it doesn't crash your game. So I'm going to go ahead and look for that defender enemy, and I'm going to place him to a point where I can just knock him in here. Something a little closer. And as for the player start, I'm just going to start right behind him so I can get the jump on him. And now I'll hit play. And now when I hit play and attack him towards the building, you can see that certain parts are breaking off. And you can see that this building is starting to cave in the more I knock him back into the wall. And now we can almost go inside a bit. Oh, and wow, this looks like it's about to collapse. And now you'll see my FPS is kind of going crazy because these building pieces are falling everywhere. I can't even get to him at this point. Move. So if you're having trouble getting your building to collapse, you can open that geometry collections file that was created and just set the damage threshold. So for the collisions, I can set the mass to something less than 2,500. So I'll do something like 1,000. And for the damage threshold, I'm going to lower this to something like, so by default, it's at 500,000. I'll do something like 20,000. And yeah, thanks for watching Code with Ro. Like, subscribe, comment below what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.